Prince's Queen mocked the human warrior, then he took off his armor. HFY Stories. Best HFY Stories, the stars stretched endlessly above the desert planet of Vera. 2 suns rose slowly, painting the sky in soft gold and pale purple. On the horizon, jagged cliffs glimmered faintly, as if they had been polished by the wind itself for centuries. Among the rocks and sand, a lone figure moved steadily, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. His name was Jareth, a human warrior from a world far across the stars. Jareth had traveled for many weeks to reach the royal city of Vera, a place of high towers, shining spires, and courts filled with beings from distant worlds. Rumor had it that the queen and her daughter, the princess, were clever and unyielding, ruling not only through force but also through wisdom. Yet, Jareth did not come to fight, at least not in the way most expected. He came because he had a mission, a purpose that required courage greater than wielding a sword or armor. As he approached the city gates, guards with bright scales and long, delicate limbs eyed him carefully. They were unlike any soldiers he had seen before. Their helmets reflected the twin suns, their hands moved quickly and precisely, and their eyes seemed to glow faintly even under the sunlight. Jareth slowed his pace, lifting a hand in greeting. "I seek an audience with the princess and the queen," he said. His voice was calm, measured, carrying clearly across the stone courtyard. The guards whispered among themselves, their voices melodic but unreadable. One stepped forward. "Humans are rare here. Few speak so boldly. Why should we let you pass?" Jareth removed a small device from his belt, a glowing cube that pulsed softly. "I bring no harm," he said. "I only wish to speak." The guard studied him. Then, after a pause that seemed far longer than it was, he nodded. "Very well. Follow me." The gates opened silently, sliding into the stone with a sound like water flowing over smooth rocks. Jareth stepped into the city, feeling a rush of anticipation. The streets were wide, paved with polished stone that reflected the sunlight. Creatures of many shapes and sizes walked alongside one another. Some floated, some skittered, some had wings, others had antennae that shimmered like crystal. All eyes turned toward him briefly, and Jareth kept his posture calm and steady. Finally he reached the grand palace, a structure of white stone and silver metal that gleamed as if it were alive. 2 massive doors opened before him, and the interior revealed a great hall, wider and taller than anything he had imagined. Light poured in from tall windows, illuminating the polished floors and intricate carvings that told the stories of the queen's ancestors. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a platform, sat the queen and the princess. The queen's robes shimmered like liquid metal, her eyes sharp and bright, filled with intelligence and curiosity. Beside her, the princess leaned slightly forward, a faint smile playing on her lips. They were watching him. Jareth felt the weight of the moment. He had come so far, traveled so many light years, and now he stood before beings who had the power to shape the fate of entire worlds. His armor clinked softly as he walked, but he did not feel intimidated. He had faced dangers before, but nothing quite like this. Not because of threat, but because of judgment. The princess laughed softly, a sound that echoed through the hall. "A human," she said, her voice light but tinged with amusement. "And alone. Tell me, warrior, why should we care about your journey?" Jareth stopped a few steps from the platform. He lowered his gaze respectfully, then raised it to meet hers. "Because, princess, I have seen worlds torn apart by misunderstanding. I have watched people fight when they could have spoken. I have come to learn, and to offer a chance to listen, rather than to battle." The queen's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Bold words," she said. "Yet bold words are easy when spoken from a distance. How will you prove that your intentions are true?" Jareth looked down at his hands for a moment, then back at the queen. "I will prove it by removing the armor I hide behind," he said. "I have carried it across galaxies, but it does not protect me from your judgment. Only honesty does." There was a pause, a ripple through the assembled court. Whispers passed from one being to another. Some tilted their heads in curiosity, others exchanged doubtful glances. The princess leaned forward. "And you would stand before us unarmed and unprotected? That is foolish." Jareth nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But I would rather be foolish than hide behind metal and call it courage. True strength is shown in openness, in willingness to be seen as you are, not as the armor makes you seem." He began the slow process of unclasping his armor. Each click and slide of metal sounded loud in the quiet hall. First the chest plate, then the bracers on his arms, then the greaves on his legs. Piece by piece, the suit that had been his protection for so long fell away. Jareth stood in a simple tunic, his hair slightly tousled, and his face calm and unafraid. The hall was completely silent. The queen raised an eyebrow. The princess blinked once, then twice, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Even the guards seemed unsure how to react. You stand there and you ask us to trust your words," the queen said finally, her voice measured. "Without the tools of war, without the shields and weapons that mark your people as warriors?" Jareth nodded. "Yes, words are the tools now. My intention is not to fight, but to speak, to listen, and to understand. I hope that is enough." The princess leaned back, crossing her arms, yet her smile was faint and cautious. "We have not had many humans visit," she said. "Fewer still who would remove their armor in such a way. It is unusual." Jareth took a careful step closer to the platform. "I do not ask for favors or leniency. I only ask for the chance to speak, to offer what I have learned from my own journeys. I have traveled far not to conquer, but to connect." The queen studied him, her eyes searching for something beyond words. The silence stretched, long enough that Jareth felt the faint tightening of nerves in his stomach. But he did not falter. He remained calm, steady, and sincere. Finally, the queen spoke. Her voice was soft but powerful. "Very well, human. You may speak. But know this, words carry weight here. They may be listened to, or they may be ignored. They may heal, or they may sow confusion. Choose them carefully." Jareth bowed his head respectfully. "I will choose them with care, your majesty. I only wish to help your worlds and mine avoid unnecessary pain and misunderstanding." The princess studied him quietly, then whispered something to the queen. The queen nodded slightly, as if agreeing with her daughter's counsel. Then, with a gesture of her hand, she invited Jareth to speak further. As he began to share stories from the worlds he had visited, the creatures of the court listened. Some leaned forward, curious about his experiences. Some smiled faintly, recognizing similar struggles on their own worlds. Even the princess's eyes softened, though she did not let her guard down completely. Jareth spoke of deserts and oceans, of cities floating in the sky, of forests so dense that sunlight barely touched the ground. He spoke of leaders who had failed to listen, and of communities that had learned to survive through communication. He spoke without fear, without arrogance, and without expectation, only with hope. When the first rays of the twin suns struck the hall, glinting off the polished floors, the court felt a subtle change. The room was not brighter because of the light, but because of the presence of someone who stood openly and honestly. The air felt warmer, calmer, and somehow lighter. The princess and the queen exchanged a look. Neither spoke yet, but the whisper of curiosity and intrigue could be felt in the hall. Jareth continued, telling stories of courage and kindness, of moments when words had prevented needless conflict. By the time the sun rose fully, Jareth had not only removed his armor, but also, in some ways, lifted the invisible shields between himself and those who listened. The hall no longer saw just a human warrior. It saw a messenger, a traveler, and perhaps a teacher. And though no battles had been fought and no weapons raised, the first step in a long journey had been taken. The step toward understanding, toward connection, and toward the hope that even across galaxies, words could matter as much as deeds. The morning sun cast long golden rays across the palace courtyard. The twin suns of Vera were bright now, making the silver towers shimmer like liquid metal. Jareth stepped out from the grand hall, feeling the warmth of the sun on his bare arms. His armor had been left behind in the hall, a pile of metal shining faintly in the polished stone light. Now there was only him in the path ahead. Standing nearby were the envoys assigned by the queen, Leora, a tall figure wrapped in robes of pale blue that seemed to ripple like water, and another being named Kale, smaller but quick, with skin that glimmered like fine crystal. They were quiet, but their eyes followed Jareth with careful attention. "You will walk with us to the outlying worlds," Leora said softly. Her voice had the gentle flow of a river. "Each world has its own customs, its own people, its own rules. We do not carry weapons. You must rely on your mind, your words, and your honesty." Jareth nodded. "I understand," he replied. "I do not need weapons. I only need the truth and the willingness to listen." Kale tilted his head, his multiple eyes blinking in sync. "Few humans speak like that. Most fight first, ask questions later. You are unusual." Jareth smiled faintly. "I have learned that words often carry more power than blades, especially in places where trust is fragile." The three of them walked through the palace gates and into the city streets. Vera was alive with motion. Merchants called out to passing buyers. Creatures floated on currents of air, and small robots skittered along the streets delivering messages. Jareth's senses drank it all in. Every detail mattered. The tilt of a head, the curve of a smile, the way sunlight reflected off glass-like skin. "Your worlds," Leora said, "are different from ours. You see differences as barriers, not as bridges." Jareth considered her words. "We are learning," he said slowly. "It takes time. It takes courage to step forward and admit we might be wrong, or that someone else has something to teach us." Leora nodded. "Then perhaps your mission is not only to teach others, but to remind yourself of what you already know." Kale made a soft clicking noise, a laugh of sorts. "This is going to be interesting," he said. "Humans are unpredictable." "Most of our envoys would find your methods strange," Jareth smiled. "Then let us be strange together." They reached the edge of the city, where great vehicles waited to transport them across the stars. The ships were long and slender, smooth like the hull of a river fish, but gleaming with technology that hummed softly. Leora led them to one of the smaller ships, built for speed and for careful observation rather than battle. As the ship lifted off the ground, the city shrinking below them, Jareth felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the real journey, not the journey to the palace, but the journey of understanding. Inside the ship, Leora gestured to a console. "Each world we visit will challenge what you think you know.
Be patient. Be honest.
Ask questions. Listen." Jareth nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. "I will do my best. I cannot promise perfection, but I can promise effort." Kale tilted his head. "Perfection is not what matters. Understanding is." The first world they visited was Veyrai Minor, a moon known for its floating forests and whispering winds. Trees hovered in midair, their roots dangling like delicate lace, and luminous flowers glowed faintly even in daylight. The people of Veyrai Minor were tall, their skin transparent in parts, revealing glowing veins beneath. They moved with a grace that seemed almost like dancing. As they descended, Jareth marveled. He had never seen anything like it. The ground was soft, almost sponge-like, and the air carried a sweet scent, like flowers and rain mixed together. The locals approached them with cautious curiosity. One of the beings, with large eyes that shimmered like opal, stepped forward. "Why have you come?" it asked in a soft, melodic voice. Jareth bowed slightly. "We come as friends. We come to speak and to learn. We wish to understand your world and share stories of others." The being tilted its head. "Stories are valuable. They shape our understanding. But what makes you worthy to tell them?" Jareth thought carefully. "I am not worthy by right. I am worthy only if my words are true and my heart is open. I have traveled far to listen and to share honestly." The being's eyes glimmered. "Then walk with us," it said, "and let your words prove their value." As they walked through the floating forests, Jareth listened carefully. He asked questions about their customs, their lives, their celebrations. Leora and Kale observed quietly, letting him navigate the interactions. He told stories of his own world, too, about the rivers that sparkled under twin moons, about villages where music healed sadness, about children who learned from elders, not through punishment but through guidance. Slowly, the locals began to smile. Slowly, trust grew. Words, simple, honest, patient words, began to build a bridge between human and alien. By the time the suns of Veyrai Minor began to set, painting the sky in colors no human palette could reproduce, Jareth had shared meals with the locals, laughed at small jokes, and learned customs he never knew existed. He realized that the greatest strength was not in fighting or showing power, but in showing respect and understanding. When night fell, Leora approached him. "You are doing well," she said. "This is not easy. Some will resist. Some will doubt, but others will open their hearts to what you offer." Jareth nodded. "It feels good," he said, "to be heard, to listen, to connect." Kale added, "And this is only the beginning. There are worlds where it will be harder. There are people who will test your patience, your honesty, your courage." "I am ready," Jareth replied. I cannot fail if I remain true to my purpose." The next morning, the ship lifted again, carrying them to the next world. Jareth watched the skies of Veyrai Minor fade into a haze of stars. He wondered what creatures they would meet, what customs they would learn, and what lessons awaited them. On the ship, he spent the long hours observing Leora and Kale, learning their methods of communication, their ways of understanding others. Every movement, every glance, every word mattered. He realized that true diplomacy was more than talking. It was seeing, feeling, and sensing the unspoken.
The days passed quickly.
Each world brought new challenges. A desert planet where music controlled the weather, a floating city in the clouds inhabited by beings who spoke only in colors, a jungle world where plants communicated through vibration. With each encounter, Jareth learned, adapted, and shared. His presence became known not as a warrior, but as a messenger, a traveler who carried words that could soothe, inspire, and connect. And back in the palace of Veera, the queen and princess watched through their crystal orbs. They observed Jareth's progress and whispered to each other. The princess tilted her head. "He is different than I expected," she said. The queen nodded. "Yes. He does not fight in the way we feared. Yet his strength is clear. Not in muscle, not in weapons, but in presence, in character. Perhaps there is more to humans than we knew." As the ship carried Jareth further into the unknown, he realized something powerful. The armor he had left behind was never truly necessary. His words, his honesty, and his courage were all he needed. And in that truth, he found a strength far greater than any metal suit could provide. The journey was only beginning. Many worlds awaited, and many hearts would be touched by his presence. Yet Jareth walked forward, calm and steady, knowing that the path of understanding was long, challenging, and rewarding, and that even a single human could make a difference among the stars. The ship hummed softly as it glided through space, carrying Jareth, Leora, and Kale toward a new star system. Outside the viewing windows, stars stretched like scattered diamonds, and nebulae glowed faintly in purple and green swirls. Jareth stood at the center of the cabin, gazing at the distant worlds, feeling anticipation stir in his chest. "This next world," Leora said, her voice calm, "will test more than patience. It will challenge how you see the meaning of community." Kale added, "The inhabitants are protective of their traditions. They do not welcome outsiders easily. You will need sensitivity, tact, and care." Jareth nodded. "I understand. I will observe first, listen second, and speak last. I will not impose myself." The ship descended toward the planet, which appeared as a swirl of orange and gold from above. Its surface was not solid in the usual sense. Patches of land floated like islands in a golden mist, and rivers of liquid light ran between them. Towers of coral-like material rose from the floating land, twisting into shapes that seemed impossible. As they approached the landing area, beings emerged from the mist. They had elongated bodies that shimmered in translucent hues, their heads adorned with fine antennae that quivered with every sound. Their limbs moved slowly, deliberately, giving an impression of grace and patience. One of them, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward. Its voice rang like a wind chime. "Who comes to the islands of Leora? Speak your name and purpose." Jareth bowed slightly. "I am Jareth, from the human world. I have come with envoys from the Queen of Veera to learn, to share, and to understand. I hope to speak, to listen, and to connect." The being tilted its head, its antennae quivering. "You wish to connect. Many have come with promises. Few stay true. Why should we trust you?" Jareth took a slow breath. "'Cause I offer only truth. I have no weapons. I have left my armor behind. I am here to learn, not to conquer." A long silence followed. The other inhabitants whispered among themselves in soft, musical tones. Finally, the leader spoke again. "Very well. You may walk among us, but you will follow our ways. You will eat what we eat, sleep where we sleep, and move as we move. Only then can understanding begin." Jareth nodded without hesitation. "I accept." The first hours were unlike anything he had imagined. The islands of Leora floated gently above glowing currents, and walking required care and attention. Jareth followed the locals, moving slowly, mimicking their gestures and observing their patterns. Every sound, every rhythm of their movements had meaning. He realized that misunderstanding even one step could be taken as disrespect. They led him to a gathering space, where he was offered a meal, soft golden fruits that shimmered faintly and water that sang as it flowed. Jareth tasted each item carefully, learning how to appreciate the textures and flavors that were new to him. He listened to the locals hum as they ate, a melody that seemed to weave their thoughts together. During the meal, a young inhabitant approached Jareth. Its eyes, large and liquid, regarded him curiously. "You are human. You do not move like us. How will you ever belong?" Jareth smiled gently. "I may never move exactly like you, but I can walk beside you, listen to you, and learn. That is how I belong, by learning and by trying to understand." The young being's antennae twitched. It seemed to consider this carefully, then nodded. After the meal, the leader brought them to a high tower that floated above the golden mist. From there, the entire archipelago of floating islands stretched into the distance. Jareth could see bridges of light connecting the islands, delicate yet strong. The leader spoke softly. "Our world is held together by balance. Every action affects another. Words, movement, and intent must be considered carefully. Speak too quickly, act without thought, and chaos will follow. Will you follow our ways?" Jareth nodded. "I will follow. I will learn from you." The first challenge came when the local children gathered near the Bridge of Light. They had translucent wings that shimmered faintly, and they flitted about, curious about the newcomers. Jareth knelt, keeping his movements slow and deliberate, and spoke gently. "Hello," he said. "I am Jareth. I have come to learn about your world. Will you show me how you move, how you sing, and how you live?" The children tilted their heads, unsure. Then one of them extended a tiny hand. Jareth mirrored the gesture, letting his hand hover just above theirs without touching, a silent sign of respect he had learned from observing their habits. Slowly, the children began to guide him, teaching him how to move across the floating paths, how to balance, and how to breathe in harmony with the currents. Hours passed, and Jareth laughed quietly, a sound that carried softly across the golden islands. The children giggled in return. He realized that connection was not immediate. It required patience, openness, and humility. In the evening, Leora spoke with him quietly. "You are learning quickly. Yet remember, some challenges are not physical. They are in the mind and heart. You must continue to be patient and sincere." Jareth nodded. "I understand, and I will continue." That night, he sat under a sky filled with twin moons, watching their reflections in the rivers of light. The beauty of Leora was beyond anything he had ever imagined, yet he understood that beauty alone did not make connection. It was understanding, listening, and honoring the ways of others that built trust. The next day brought a larger challenge. The leader of the islands asked him to speak before the Council of Elders. They were tall, translucent figures, each with a distinct glow that pulsed in rhythm with their thoughts. Jareth felt a pang of nervousness, yet he stood straight. "My journey," he began, "is not to change your ways, nor to claim your knowledge as my own. I seek only to learn, to understand, and to share what I have learned from other worlds. I hope that together we may find ways to protect what is beautiful in every world, not through force, but through respect and understanding." The elders listened in silence. Their glow pulsed slowly, rhythmically, as if they were measuring the sincerity of his words. One elder finally spoke. "You are a truthful human. You do not seek power. You seek understanding. That is rare." Another elder added, "Your presence has been gentle, yet meaningful. You move slowly, but you see quickly." Jareth bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you. I am honored to be allowed to learn from you." By the time their stay on Leora ended, Jareth had walked across floating islands, shared songs with the children, and learned customs he could never have imagined. Leora and Kale observed him closely, noting his patience, humility, and ability to connect with beings so unlike himself. As the ship lifted off once again, Jareth looked back at the islands, shimmering in the golden mist. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced a challenge not of battle, but of understanding, and he had succeeded by remaining true to himself. Kale nudged him gently. "You are doing more than I expected," he said. "Most humans would have been frustrated or left early. You persisted. You listened. You adapted. That is rare." Jareth smiled softly. "It is not just me. I had guidance. I observed. I tried. And I learned from those around me. That is all anyone can do." Leora added, "The journey ahead will be more difficult. Worlds where trust is harder to earn, where patience must be deeper than you think, but you have taken the first steps well." Jareth nodded, feeling both excitement and determination. "Then I will continue. I will meet each world as it comes, and I will listen first. Words, patience, and respect, these will be my guides." And as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewing window, Jareth understood that true courage was not in fighting or proving strength, but in opening oneself to others and listening carefully and in walking with humility and honesty. The journey was far from over. Many worlds awaited, each with their own rules, challenges, and wonders. But Jareth walked forward with confidence, calmness, and hope, because he had learned an important truth. Understanding could travel farther than any ship, and connection could shine brighter than any armor.